Alright, what's going on everyone? I'm a member of the Blender community and welcome to the video. Today in this video we're going to be reviewing some artwork that artists sent in over Instagram. Now I know this is a different video, but I'll have all the links from the Instagram artists down in the description so you can check them out. Now most of these renders are going to be focusing on Blender. I haven't really checked with everyone if all of them are Blender, but the same art principles apply for all programs. Alright, so this first render here, we can see that there's a bronze bike, looks like it's up on some sort of podium or pedestal. Maybe in a museum, maybe an attraction, and this looks pretty good. We can see that the artist used a focus here because it's blurry in the background, it's not as blurry in the foreground. And we can see that the artist might have used some spotlight because we can see that there's an arc on the wall over here. Now I'd first like to compliment this piece of art because it is bronze. Looks like you would find it in a museum. You probably couldn't tell the difference between this and a real picture. Looks like it's some sort of normal bike. You know, a bike you would ride around in the neighborhood. And overall, this piece looks really centered. It looks really good. Now, let's get into some negatives. Normally, this really wouldn't be a big deal, but you can see that there's an edge of a wall in the background here. This looks like the little box that the artist might have put this in. Maybe they just block out the background. And I can say it was a good idea to put the bike in the background. I do like this line over here. Looks like it was slightly beveled, not perfectly sharp. That's pretty good, because nothing is perfectly sharp in real life, not even the tip of a knife. If you zoom really close into it, everything is still round and curved. Not even these pixels on the screen are perfectly sharp. But I can say if the artist extended this wall a little, the seam in the wall wouldn't draw as much attention to the scene, because it would be over here, and it would be blocked out. So overall, if the artist just moved the piece of art over this way, or they move the wall a little farther down that way, it would work out. But that's a very minute detail, it doesn't really matter as much. Alright, the next thing I noticed about this render is this chain on the bike. Now I do like that the artist added a chain because that means that they have attention to detail. But what I don't like about this is that the chain isn't necessarily a chain, it kind of looks just like a loop running around here. Now I'm not saying this is extremely important because overall the width of this wire here, this chain, is about maybe 3 pixels, but it's still noticeable. My second critique about this chain is that the chain isn't really wrapping around, or it's not really gripping this gear in any way. What I mean about this is if you look up chains in Google, you know, bike chains, similar things like that, you can see that the chain grips around the outside edges of the gear and it kind of encloses itself on it. That way you make sure that there's no slips whatsoever. This chain over here, maybe if it was widened a little, just like that, and it had little holes in the middle for the gears or the grooves to fit into, that would have worked a little bit better. But overall, that's also a very small detail. The next details I would like to focus on are these tires over here. Now, these tires, I like how they're shaped, they look pretty good, but on the inside here, and it might just be because of the reflection, normally there is a seam on the inside, a little bump on the edge of the tires, just to make sure the seams are tight and nothing escapes. But it doesn't look like the artist put it here. These look like tires that would more or less be on a race bike, but this bike doesn't really look like it's for racing. If it was a race bike, the handlebars might be back like this. If it was a race bike, the seat might have been lower, higher, something like that. So in the future, I would add a little seam, not as big as this one, but a small seam, maybe about that thickness right there, just on the edge of the tire to make it look a little more realistic. After that, these spokes here, I'm pretty sure you copied this off of a bike, so I'm not going to complain about these spokes. These spokes could look a little bit thicker though. It doesn't necessarily look like all the power that the biker is expressing is being put into here. Now my next critique is there aren't really any brakes. This might look like a brake here, but it looks like it's just the edge of this handlebar here. And it's fine if you don't have any front brakes, but you don't have any back brakes either. Brakes require a wire running all the way down to the brake, and that's really hard to model. I don't blame you for this. And the brake would maybe be on the edge, maybe on the back right around here, but I don't really see any brakes on this bike, and it's a piece of art. It looks like it should be in a museum, I understand, but if you're going for the most realistic design, I don't know if you would or not. Okay, let's just open Instagram to get all these stupid notifications out of the way. I don't necessarily know if you're going for the most realistic design, but it kind of looks like you were with this chain and the gear over here, so if you were, I would simply recommend adding some brakes to your bike. Next thing is a seat adjustment. Not many bikes have that, doesn't necessarily matter, but if you could add a little seat adjustment over here, that'd be cool. Besides that, this is a very good render. I like it a lot. I like the use of the spotlight. I like how it's up on a little round pedestal here. That's a very unique idea. Don't know what it's supported by, but that, I don't really think that matters much. I mean, it's a piece of art. It looks like it's meant to be in a museum or something like that. And overall, looking pretty good. Let's move on to the next piece. Alright, our next piece of art here is a Coke can render. Once again, I'll leave the links to all of the pictures and all of the artists in the description. Now this Coke can render, I like the use of the Coke can being torn off. I like nature, I like the moss growing around it on the rock. I love the mushrooms, dandelions, stuff like that. Looks really good. Looks like he used good textures here. But one thing I immediately noticed was this label over here. Now, this label, it can be okay the way it is. The human eye will naturally go where it's trained to go, and my human eye is naturally trained to read, it's naturally trained to see numbers. So when you have a detail like this on the edge of a can, it kind of stands out a little. Before we get into that, I would like to say how you made the can sort of three-dimensional by adding another layer here between. It has a thickness to it like normal cans do, and that's awesome. But what I noticed over here is that this material looks kind of stretched. Even if it was a tall Coke can that went all the way out here, this material still looks kind of stretched. And here's what I mean by it. His numbers look stretched, and I'm pretty sure this says calories per serving or calories per can or whatever. But if we look at a normal Coke can, yeah, the label on the side here isn't necessarily as stretched as what you have it here. So I don't know if that is a UV issue. I don't know if that's a mesh issue. I'm going to assume it's a UV issue. But yeah, it's little small details like that. The human eye naturally gets attracted to things we learned in school, stuff we like. That's why cities are so fun to look at. That's why skylights are so fun to look at. They're just cool. And besides that, I love all the textures here. It's looking really good. I like the use of the water down here. And I like how you made the topology curve in so it looks like the water is meant to be there. One thing I do see though, if you look into the background, it doesn't look like there's much behind the scene. It kind of looks like the scene just ends exactly there and nothing else is there. Now I can understand the lighting of the scene looks very touchy, but it wouldn't hurt to put in an HDRI that doesn't affect anything in the scene here, but you can still see it in the background and it would be blurred out by the focus. Nice use of the focus, by the way. But it kind of looks like you just create a little island here in which everything's going on and nothing is really happening in the background. So if you were to put green HDRI in the background, something like that, I might just be missing it, but it kind of looks like you have one here. You have something similar to it, but I can't really see it. So if you were to add some color into the background, make it look like it's different. I mean, I can understand this might be at nighttime, you know, there might be a light shining in on it. If that's what you wanted to do, that's pretty cool. But for me, I would prefer just something in the background here. One thing I would like to point out is how you put this little grass blade above everything. Really made it look like the scene isn't necessarily set up to look at, but your eye still gets drawn to it. It looks like it's a piece of nature. Looks really good. You have some hard surfaces here, you have some life here, and you have a man-made object here, which I really like. It's a nice combination. It looks really good. Overall, this render was really good. Let's move on to the next render. So the first thing I noticed about the scene is the lighting here, here, and even the volumetrics lighting over here. The light coming through into it. It looks to me like that lighting is a really good addition to your render. But overall, it just sort of gives a warm feeling to the render. I like what you did with the seats here. I like how you made it go up and down to accommodate people sitting there. That's really cool. I like your use of the tile down here. I like how this sort of receptacle, something down here. And I do like the walls. One thing that stands out to me is the walls. I like how you sort of divided the wall right here into some gray and you carried it over into the door. Alright, now let's get on to some critiques. Well, I do like this render and I do think it's pretty cool. I don't necessarily know where it is. I'm assuming this is on some sort of train or transportation vehicle. And I might just be dumb, but to me, I don't necessarily think of an exact place as soon as I see this render. If you were to put something in, sort of maybe a little poster over here that specified where we are, not necessarily like too big or too small, just gave a little hint at where we are, that would be cool. I'm just assuming that we're at a train station because these kind of look like railroad tracks here. It might even be a bridge or something like that, but to me, that's what I see. And now let's get into the really small stuff that everybody hates. Right down here, I don't know, there might have been a shading issue. I see a little triangle over here, and I see a little dark spot over here. That might have been because you didn't recalculate your normals. I don't necessarily know that. It only stands out to me because when I zoom out in Blender, everything gets compressed due to Blender and what happens when you zoom out. And those spots just appeared a little bit darker to me. Alright, next over here, it looks like you forgot to put smooth shading or subdivide this couch one more time, because you can see the little grooves in the couch running across like that. Looks like you might have used a bevel modifier or beveled these edges here. You can see it up top here too when the light reflects on it. Might just be because of the material, but that's what it looks like to me. I like these pipes here. By the way, you can check out a tutorial on the Blender Community YouTube channel of how to create pipes in Blender. 2 different methods, by the way. Now that we're done that self shout out, you may have had the same problem over here where you forgot to apply smooth shading or subdivide a few times. One thing I like about this render is how these side pieces of the doors are extended from the wall. Kind of gives it a feel, kind of gives it a cool feel, something you would stare at, you know, you're staring off into space. That's really cool. I don't know why that just caught my eye. I like the little addition you had up here, because if you didn't have this, everything would sort of seem empty up here, and that's pretty cool. Now something very small and minute, if you zoom all the way, oops, if you zoom all the way into this vent here, you can see that this is the same color as the wall. Now I don't know if you meant to do this, but it looks like you used a Boolean modifier to cut out a hole in the wall here, or maybe you subdivided and cut out a hole, but on the bottom there, it doesn't look like you cut out a hole, so I would just make sure that a little hole is being cut out there. Besides that, I don't necessarily know what these are. They might be part of the design. If I were to see them in other places, like over here, maybe I could understand what they were, but I don't necessarily know why they're there. Something extremely small. Looks like you might have had a mesh issue or a texture issue or something. There's a little dark spot up top here. That's really small though. I don't think anyone's going to notice that if they weren't staring at it. Besides that, I like this little door here. This little door looks pretty fancy. Overall, great renders, pretty good. Let's move on to the next render. And now this render sort of stood out to me because it used so many different aspects of photo compositing. It used so many different aspects of photography. Now here, if we look down, we can see that we have a few famous photos. I don't know what that one is. That one's Einstein. This is American troops raising a flag. This is the famous picture of people kissing. Looks like some military type stuff. I'm sorry if I don't know what that is. Looks like tanks. And they're all hanging out as pictures in the background over here. Now I'd first like to say how you change the rotation of each picture to make it look like they weren't all on a perfectly flat plane. By that I mean it looks like this picture is reasonably ahead of this picture. Maybe it's because of the wind, maybe it's because the clothespin was on. That's pretty good. Speaking of the clothespins, I literally just noticed this. It looks like you might have had a mesh shading issue or maybe even a topology issue. But it doesn't look like it duplicated on any of these other renders, so it just looks like it's the one you focused on here. Next, I would like to point out the mesh. Although I can slightly tell there's a wooden texture here, it doesn't really look like it because of the focus in the image right in the center here. You know, you obviously want to look at the center image of the picture, and I can tell you probably put a wood texture on here, but it doesn't necessarily look like it. Maybe if you made this texture a little bit brighter, I could see it, but it doesn't necessarily look like it's a wooden texture. It looks like you might have just slapped a diffuse texture on there, but I can see that you didn't. Next, I would like to point out the lens distortion here. This looks like it's using lens distortion because we have this color rainbow effect over here, and it kind of has a slight fisheye. Might be an inverse fisheye. I think it's a fisheye. Overall, that looks pretty cool, but it did reveal something down here that I don't necessarily know what it is. Kinda looks like it's just something you had off on the scene. When I use lens distortion, it doesn't look like my renders do that. And I know how you apply this effect. Maybe if you put fit in frame or fit to view or something like that, it would look better. But to me, I don't really like this lens distortion on the edges here. It kind of subtracts from the render. Still a good render though so far. Next, you have a beach background. Now I like the beach background, but if you pay attention to the sun, it looks like the sun's right over here. We have a nice sunset over the water and the sand. Now the sun, it emits light, obviously. And it looks like most of your lighting is coming from back here. But maybe if you were to combine your picture images here, your picture textures, look like the sun is sort of shining through the images, and make the images have sort of a more glow and a more warmth feel to it, because obviously we're on the beach. But that's something minor. Next is the path of this little clothesline we have here. The path of this little clothesline looks okay, but something I noticed in the middle here is it all sort of leads to one point and more or less of a straight line. It dips and then it leads in a straight point the other way. Now clotheslines are gradual. They create sort of a semicircle if you let them hang low enough, and everything is perfectly gradual. But with this, it kind of looks like a straight line, a dip, and then another straight line. Now, I don't necessarily know if that's exactly the case. Maybe it was curved. But to me, it doesn't look as curved as it could be. But that's very minor. Besides that, this render is very good. I really like this render. I don't know if you meant to do this, but all these images over here kind of look black and white. And then slowly but surely, it kind of looks like they fade to color over here. I don't know if that was intentional. If it was, that looks pretty cool. And it sort of adds to the whole mood of the scene. Alright, overall, this render is really good. I love the background, I love the effect, I love the feeling it gives off. Let's move on to the next render. Alright, for our next render, we have this outdoor scene here with a car. Looks like outside in the middle of a city somewhere. Now, I would first like to point out the attention to detail on the car. What I noticed almost immediately is this car here, hyper realistic, right? Looks like it could be in the real world. But over here, these windows, you know, these weird windows don't necessarily look like it's a real city. I don't know if that was the style that this artist was going for the car to be completely different from the style of the city. Kind of looks like you tried to put realistic textures over here, and tried to make the windows kind of wonky, because these windows don't really match up in terms of the car. This car is super realistic, as I stated before, but the city really isn't, so this doesn't really match to me. You know, in real life, everything's, you know, grungy, messed up. This looks a little too perfect. These trees look alright, you can keep these trees in here, but, you know, these buildings here, everything just looks a little too perfect and a little too, blocky and cartoony. Now, I understand that all of this detail would be an insane amount of time to sculpt and render and add details to and stuff like that. So, I understand. But what I don't necessarily get is why you decided to put these two together. If you're doing it for, like, a unique idea, if you're doing it intentionally, that's pretty cool. But if you're not doing it intentionally, I would either change the city, or put the car by itself, or put the car maybe around an HDR or something like that, because the style of this car here and the style of the city don't necessarily match up. Now, once again, I do like the car, I like the materials, I like the attention to detail with the headlights over here with the little dots on the side of the headlight. I just called them headlights, brake lights, or reverse lights, or whatever you want to call them. I like how these windows over here are reflective, kind of look tinted. That's pretty cool. I like these trees, good attention to detail. Yeah, these trees are green, pretty evergreen, looks like. And this fence back here, this looks pretty cool. I don't know why you didn't put this up front. Has a pretty cool design. But besides that, the city looks a little too perfect and the car looks a little too realistic. So if you were to, I don't know, maybe take a chunk out of this wall, make it look like it's been chiseled away or something like that, add some more realistic textures to the wall, because right now it doesn't look like you have any textures. If this is early in your scene and you just need to tweak it a little to finish the render and you're going to make the city look more realistic, there you go, you've already done it. But to me, these windows look kind of wacky. It doesn't necessarily look like it would be a real life scene. This car looks like it would be in a real life scene, but this doesn't look like it would be in a real life scene. Besides that, I like the sky. I like how it's darker up here than it is down here. That looks pretty good. I like the reflections on the windows. The trees are awesome. The car is just absolutely stunning. And it probably did take a certain amount of time to model all of these buildings, so that's pretty awesome. And I like how you use the rule of threes here, or the tri-rule, or whatever it's called. You had your object in one of the 4 areas that the human eye naturally goes to. That's pretty awesome. But overall, pretty good render. I really like the car. The environment could use some touch-ups, but, you know, it looks good. I like your attention to detail here with the grooves in the sidewalk. That's awesome. And overall, pretty good. Pretty good. Let's move on to our next one. Alright, with our next render here, this one comes from Snappy CGI. If you don't know who Snappy CGI is, really cool. He actually has a website, and it's called iMesh. At iMesh, it provides super realistic textures, everything that has to go with it, the color, the displacement, every single thing that has to go with it. Hundreds of free textures coming soon, as you can see here. Textures are hyper realistic if you've seen any of his renders. Absolutely amazing. Price is absolutely just stunning. The competitors' prices are a lot higher. iMesh's prices are a lot lower than anything you're going to find out there, especially with the super realistic textures that you are going to 100% need in your renders. If you're doing interior renders, if you're doing architecture renders, anything like that, you're definitely going to need all of these floor textures, these metal textures, plastic, stone, anything. You're definitely going to need textures. So iMesh is a really good place to get it. Now, iMesh also sells things like 3D products. You can see every single thing that they sell here, and this is just the sections. If you go into one of the sections, you can see they have lots and lots of different models for you to pick out of. And they're a lot lower in price than the competitors. All of these models are super realistic, and the best part is they even have free models. As you can see here, free models released throughout August. I would hop on this deal if I were you. Boom, boom, boom. Free model every single day. This bed is super realistic, and as you can see, models are going to be released every single day. Super interactive website, super fun website to play around, amazing textures, amazing models, and yeah, I would hop on this deal if I were you guys. iMesh, IMESHH.com. Alright, back to the renders. Now this render is absolutely stunning, most likely used with iMesh textures. I would say you can maybe add some grunge, or you could turn down the reflection or the glossiness of this faucet here, this faucet, or the what do you call this? It makes water come out of the sink, little sink faucet here. I would say it's a little too reflective. Besides that, everything looks pretty good in here. I mean, the plants look realistic. This is one of the free models that was just released yesterday. This clock looks realistic. Everything looks pretty good from what I can see. Although I don't know what these sockets are. I live in America, so we have a completely different electrical socket. If somebody in the comments could tell me what socket that is, that'd be awesome. Besides that, that's the only thing I could find. I was looking for quite a few minutes at this, and I couldn't find anything. At first, I thought there was a UV problem over here, and then I realized later as I looked over here, no, that's just how it's supposed to be. So I have absolutely no idea what I could critique on here besides these outlets here that aren't American. No, I'm just kidding. Whatever, you do what you want with your outlets. You get your electricity however you need to get it. But you even added the reflection back here with a window that isn't even in the scene. I feel like that's awesome. One thing I really like is how you used your colors here. Now you have a few dark things over here, dark things over here. You really put the darkness where you want the viewer's attention to be. Not necessarily the walls, but you added contrast where you want the viewer's attention to be. There's no contrast over here. The viewer's not going to look over there. Over here we have, you know, light vases and a dark cabinet or shelf. Over here we have dark lights up against a white ceiling. That's pretty good. I like how these lights are glowing sort of yellow or orange up here. That's realistic. And over here you had sort of white reflective panels surrounding a bunch of dark appliances. So everything that you wanted the viewer's attention to be drawn to, you put in a place of contrast, which I thought was pretty cool. Alright, on to the next render from the exact same maker of this render. Alright, now once again, super realistic, right? He even added the cords going up to the TV here. That's something that a lot of people would miss. Now, one thing that I noticed, that says 1924. It might be hard to read, so it looks like 1924. Now, in real time, that would be 624. So I looked outside of the window to see if that was corresponding to the daytime. And yes, it is. It looks about 6 o'clock outside. But one thing I noticed is, why would you be using military time? It looks like a civilian household. I mean, it looks all tidy and stuff, but it looks like a civilian household. So I don't understand why you would be using military time over here. You might want to clean that up or change that somehow. But besides that, just like your last render, I could only point out maybe 1 or 2 things. That's awesome. I love this plant here too. That's really cool. Alright, on to the next renders. Alright, now from my understanding, this render is actually for like an architecture actual work, so it does look pretty professional. The first thing I could see here is the grass. I could see the grass looked absolutely realistic because you had patches that still needed to be filled in. The grass covered more area over here because people weren't walking on it from the sidewalk. I think that's awesome. I like the benches too. They look really cool. And I like the texture on the wall here, this little wavy texture. You see it on a lot of hotels and apartments. Now this might be complicated, but this guy here, I think I understand how you added this guy in. You probably went into Photoshop, cut out the space around him, added some motion blur in it, made it a PNG, and then inserted it in here. That does look okay, but the problem with this is it just doesn't look realistic to me. If anything, I would subtract this person, because people are really hard to put in scenes, especially if you're doing it that way. It's really hard to tweak the lighting on the character to get it just right, but something just throws me off. I wouldn't be able to tell that this is a render if this person wasn't here. So improve on the way that you insert people, I guess. But besides that, this render's looking pretty snazzy. I like how you added props up here to add a sense of photorealism. You know, people actually live here. That's awesome. These plants, you could have been a little bit more creative. You probably could add like some books instead of this plant over here or something like that. But, you know, besides the repetitive nature over there, that's pretty good. Same thing over here. It kind of looks like you copied and pasted the same plants over and over. But besides that, that's pretty good. I don't know if that's a leaf. That just adds some realism to it though. I like the reflections with the windows, are kind of tinted windows. That's really cool. And you added some little minor details to the inside. So, yeah, I feel like that's awesome. You just really added a sense of photorealism, given the just random objects placed throughout the scene in the proper places where they need to be placed. But, yeah, main critiques here are this person. I understand the process that you put this person in. I understand that it's probably really hard to put people in. But I would somehow improve on the way that you put people in, because it looks like this guy, something's just off about him. Like I said, I wouldn't be able to tell that this is a render if this person wasn't here. And I didn't even realize it looks like you have a person over here. I feel like this person's okay, mainly because the person isn't moving and it's not really noticeable. But wow, once I notice this person, I can't really take my eyes off it. That's really funny. But yeah, architecture looks amazing. Probably took an hour to render. Have all these plants here. That's awesome. And overall, it's a really good render. Alright, thank you so much for watching. That was it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks to all of the artists who submitted their pieces of art to be critiqued. Hope you guys had an awesome time. I had an awesome time editing this video, and the community for Blender is amazing. So that was it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe. I'll leave a link to my gaming channel, and I'll leave a link to all of the artists down in the description. I'll leave a link to iMesh down in the description. So that was it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. I'll see you later.